the southwest corner of Utah and northern Arizona, Nevada. And we just rescue rental cars and over.
Matt, the charismatic star of the YouTube channel Matt's Off-Road Recovery, has captivated millions across the world with his daring vehicle rescues, unforgettable desert adventures, and his warm, easygoing personality. His trademark yellow Jeep and calm problem-solving style have become instantly recognizable to fans who tune in daily to watch stranded drivers pulled from impossible situations. For many, Matt is the face of resilience, a man who seems to thrive where others would crumble, smiling even in the toughest jobs and turning disasters into opportunities for adventure. But behind the bright lens of the camera lies a reality far less glamorous. Away from the cheering fans and viral videos, Matt's story is filled with unseen struggles, brutal setbacks, and wounds deeper than any mechanical failure. His journey to success has not been the smooth, adventurous ride that millions of viewers imagine. Instead, it has been a road paved with exhaustion, financial turmoil, public criticism, painful betrayals, and even the heavy weight of criminal accusations. This is not just the story of a man pulling cars out of sand or mud. It is the story of grit against odds, trust shattered by greed, and a hero forced to face battles that no recovery strap could fix. From the sweltering deserts of Utah to the dark chambers of legal courtrooms, Matt's off-road journey has tested him in ways far beyond towing. Tonight, we go beyond the staged recoveries and thrilling adventures. We uncover the hidden reality, the struggles that shaped him, the betrayal that wounded him, and the rescue that almost cost him everything. This is the untold story behind Matt's off-road recovery. When Matt first stepped into the world of recoveries around 2009, the odds were stacked heavily against him. He didn't have the fleet of specialized rigs that fans recognize today. There were no advanced tools, no sponsors, no team of editors ensuring that every move looked flawless on camera. What he had was sheer determination, a passion for helping others, and whatever equipment he could scrape together. In those early days, recoveries were not the smooth, almost choreographed operations that audiences now watch on YouTube. Instead, they were grueling marathons of trial and error. Matt often dragged cable extensions by hand through burning sand, pulling them dozens of yards only to realize he needed more. Back and forth he would go, hauling heavy gear under the desert sun, his boots sinking deep with every step. What could have been a quick job stretched into hours of sweat and frustration. His machines were pushed to their limits, often threatening to give out before the vehicles he was rescuing were even freed. The desert of southern Utah, particularly places like Sand Hollow, was no forgiving playground. The sun turned the ground into a furnace, while the sand swallowed vehicles whole, making every recovery a battle against both nature and mechanics. Clients often faced shocking bills, several hundred, sometimes even over $1,000. Yet even these high charges didn't guarantee Matt a profit. Fuel costs, constant wear and tear, broken parts, and the ever-present risk of damaging his own rigs often ate up what little he earned. Many times Matt's generous spirit worked against him. He gave discounts to desperate, stranded families, knowing they couldn't afford the full bill. His kindness became a double-edged sword. It won hearts, but it left his own finances gasping for air. And then there were the times when the rescuer became the one who needed saving. Matt's rigs weren't invincible. They sank into deep sand or became trapped in mud just like the vehicles he was trying to rescue. On more than one occasion, he found himself performing a rescue of the rescuer, a humiliating and exhausting ordeal that cost both time and money. Ropes snapped, winches failed, and essential parts wore out faster than he could replace them. Determined to improve, Matt invested in building and modifying vehicles that would become legends in his line of work. The bright yellow Jeep, nicknamed the Banana, and the Morvair, a modified Corvair off-road beast, became symbols of his ingenuity. But these creations didn't come cheap. Every weld, every adjustment, every experimental part drained his already strained finances. And because trial and error was his constant companion, mistakes were frequent and costly. But the struggles weren't confined to the dirt trails and desert heat. Behind the scenes, Matt faced another challenge that threatened to crush his dream before it truly began: technology. He realized that to survive financially, he needed to share his adventures with the world. But video editing wasn't his strength. He stumbled through complicated software, fought with corrupted files, lost hours of footage, and cursed at audio that refused to sync. Uploading a single video could take hours, if not days. Managing editors proved to be another mountain to climb. Every video that finally reached YouTube was a product of not just off-road determination, but digital frustration. When his channel began to take off, it seemed like his hardships were finally paying off. But with success came new struggles. More vehicles meant more maintenance. More staff meant more responsibility. More viewers meant higher expectations. What looked like smooth sailing on camera was actually a tightrope walk, where one wrong step, financially, technically, or publicly, could send everything crashing down. Money, always money, remained the shadow chasing him. Insurance companies became another obstacle. Payment disputes, underpayments, or delays in processing claims left him cornered financially. Some of the biggest recoveries, hauling out trucks, RVs, or even buses, brought him little more than a pat on the back, as expenses outweighed compensation. Adding to this storm was the pressure of being constantly on display. Every move, every decision, every recovery was filmed, scrutinized, and criticized. Fans loved the spectacle, but critics were quick to pounce on mistakes, sloppy techniques, or near misses. To keep viewers engaged, the temptation to take bigger risks grew, and with it the danger of accidents. The clash between dramatic footage and real safety weighed heavily on him, and yet through all this, Matt pressed on. His grit, his refusal to quit, his ability to laugh even in failure, these qualities became the fuel that carried him forward. But no amount of perseverance could prepare him for what came next. Because while deserts and debts were harsh, the wound of betrayal would cut far deeper. As Matt's name grew and his channel became a household brand, the attention it attracted wasn't always from strangers. Sometimes it came from those closest to him. While fans saw camaraderie and teamwork on screen, the reality behind the scenes began to fracture. There was one man in particular, KC. He wasn't just an employee, nor was he a distant acquaintance. He was a friend, someone woven tightly into the daily workings of Matt's company, someone who had witnessed the struggles, the victories, and the growth from day one. Casey knew not only how the recoveries worked, but also the intricate details of how the channel was run, how videos were filmed and edited, how the finances moved. That closeness made what followed sting all the more. According to Matt's account, Casey began to crave more of the spotlight. The fame, the recognition, the financial rewards, he wanted a bigger piece of the pie. He reportedly believed that much of the audience tuned in for him, and that his presence alone justified a greater share of the income. Dissatisfaction hardened into demand. Soon, Casey was asking for nearly half of the revenue, a request that Matt, already under immense stress, couldn't agree to. But the timing of this storm was cruel. Matt was already under the suffocating weight of legal scrutiny. Investigations into his business practices loomed, threatening both his livelihood and his reputation. And it was at this fragile moment that Casey allegedly made his move. What followed was nothing less than betrayal. By Matt's telling, Casey delivered an ultimatum: pay him $40,000 or face exposure. It wasn't an empty threat. Casey had intimate knowledge of Matt's operations, the very kind of information being examined by authorities. He knew exactly where the vulnerabilities were, and he used that knowledge as a weapon. To increase the pressure, legal letters began arriving. They ordered Matt to remove KC, his associates, and even members of Matt's family from the videos unless the money was paid. It was blackmail, cold, calculated, and devastating. Worse, KC allegedly used his insider knowledge to further complicate Matt's legal situation, pressing on every crack until the entire foundation seemed ready to collapse. For most people, the legal battles alone, probation, fines, courtrooms, lawyers, would have been unbearable. But for Matt, the crushing weight wasn't the paperwork or penalties. It was the betrayal itself. To realize that a man he once called a friend, a man he trusted deeply, had turned against him for money was a blow that pierced deeper than any broken rope or lost paycheck. This was more than a business dispute. It was a personal wound, a reminder that even in success, the closest allies can become the sharpest enemies. And yet, as devastating as this betrayal was, Matt's greatest challenge still lay ahead, one that threatened not just his trust, but his entire future. For years, Matt had been seen as the smiling hero of the desert. His YouTube channel became a beacon of entertainment and inspiration. Families who found themselves stranded in sand or stuck in rocks often walked away relieved, even grateful, with Matt's calm presence turning their nightmare into an adventure worth remembering. Fans saw him as more than just a rescuer of vehicles. He was a rescuer of people, a man who brought hope when things looked hopeless. But in 2021, that image collided with a brutal reality. The man admired for saving others was suddenly facing charges of his own. Criminal accusations in the state of Utah sent shockwaves through his fan base. For the first time, the smiling rescuer was on the defensive, his reputation on the line. The charges weren't minor. They were felony accusations, carrying the possibility of prison time and the certainty of permanent damage to his reputation. For someone whose career rested entirely on trust and goodwill, it was catastrophic. To understand the case, you have to go back before the bright spotlight of YouTube. Before fame, before viral recoveries, Matt ran a traditional towing company called Winder Towing. Through that company, he had a contract with the American Automobile Association, AAA. For ordinary breakdowns, flat tires, dead batteries, simple tows, the arrangement worked smoothly. But Matt's true specialty was never the ordinary. His passion was the impossible. The stuck vehicles in deep sand, the recoveries in treacherous terrain. It was here that lines began to blur. The very skills that made him exceptional also put him under scrutiny. Questions arose about billing practices, about whether certain recoveries were appropriately handled under the AAA contract. What for years had been his bread and butter now became the grounds for accusations that threatened everything. To his supporters, it seemed unthinkable. How could the man who pulled families to safety now be painted as a criminal? But in the cold eyes of the law, reputation meant little. Courtrooms don't run on good intentions. They run on paperwork, contracts, and evidence. And in 2021, all of it was stacked against Matt. The rescues that once defined him now seemed to be the very thing tearing his future apart. What had been his greatest gift was now his greatest liability. Matt's journey is not simply about pulling vehicles out of the sand. It is a saga of perseverance, betrayal, and resilience. The deserts tested his strength, but betrayal tested his heart. Legal challenges tested his resolve, and public scrutiny tested his patience. Through it all, he remained standing. Not untouched, not unscarred, but standing. His story reminds us that the road to success is never smooth. Behind every viral video lies exhaustion, sacrifice, and sometimes heartbreak. For Matt, the struggles have been countless, the betrayals bitter, and the losses heavy. And yet his grit, the very quality that first made him stand out in the harsh Utah desert, remains. Whether his future brings redemption or more storms, one truth is undeniable. Matt's off-road recovery has always been about more than vehicles. It is about the unrelenting human spirit, a refusal to quit even when the world feels determined to pull you under. His journey continues, uncertain as ever. But if history has shown anything, it's that Matt's story, like his rescues, is never over until the last pull is made. As Matt's channel skyrocketed, fame became both a blessing and a burden. What once felt like a small-town recovery business transformed into a global spectacle. Every video pulled millions of views, every recovery became a performance, and every mistake was magnified 100 times over. Fans adored him. But fame also invited a darker crowd, critics, rivals, and people eager to drag him down. The comments section was no longer just a place for praise. It became a battlefield of judgment. Every decision was second-guessed, every risky recovery labeled as reckless, and every close call dissected frame by frame. For Matt, who had once worked quietly in the desert, the weight of constant surveillance began to feel suffocating. With fame came expectations, and with expectations came pressure. Sponsors wanted bigger stunts, viewers wanted more drama, and competitors waited for him to slip. The desert wasn't the only place filled with traps. The digital stage had its own snares, and one wrong move online could cost as much as a broken rig in the sand. Behind every video, behind the cameras and the recoveries, there was Matt's family, his wife, his children, the people who lived with the consequences of his choices. While viewers saw an adventurous rescuer, his family saw the exhaustion, the financial stress, and the never-ending demands of fame. The business consumed more than just money. It consumed time. Late nights editing, long days in the desert, endless phone calls from stranded drivers. Birthdays, family dinners, and quiet evenings were often interrupted by emergencies or the need to get the next video up. For those closest to him, it was a constant sacrifice. Friendships, too, grew strained. Some colleagues couldn't handle the spotlight, others grew envious of the attention, and some simply drifted away as the channel became less of a hobby and more of a relentless enterprise. The betrayal from KC was only the loudest crack. In truth, the pressure of success had quietly fractured many bonds long before. Matt's recovery empire wasn't built on rescues alone. It was also built on business decisions, some wise, others costly. Expanding the fleet, hiring staff, building new rigs, all of it demanded money, and money demanded risk. For every brilliant investment that paid off, there was another that drained his resources. He learned the hard way that success isn't just about pulling vehicles free. It's about pulling your business through storms of debt, contracts, and lawsuits. The lessons weren't always kind. Deals fell through. Lawsuits loomed. Even the merchandise, a lifeline for many YouTubers, came with its own challenges. Supply chains, quality control, customer complaints. Every problem added another weight to shoulders already heavy from the desert sun. Beyond money, beyond betrayal, beyond even legal troubles, there was another danger lurking: nature itself. The desert is unforgiving, and no amount of fame changes that truth. Rattlesnakes, sudden storms, blazing heat, and treacherous cliffs turned every job into a gamble. One mistake could mean more than a broken vehicle. It could mean injury or even death. Over the years, Matt faced close calls, rollovers that nearly crushed rigs, cables that snapped with deadly force, vehicles that threatened to tumble into ravines. On video, they looked like thrilling stunts. In reality, they were near tragedies. His calm smile often hid the truth, that every recovery carried risks most viewers could never imagine. After the legal troubles, the betrayal, and the storm of criticism, Matt faced the hardest task of all: rebuilding trust. His fans were loyal, but the stain of criminal charges and public controversy doesn't vanish overnight. He had to prove not just once, but again and again, that he was more than the accusations. Through consistency, transparency, and relentless work, he fought to restore his reputation. Every successful recovery, every video posted, every smiling family pulled free became another brick in the wall of redemption. Slowly, painfully, he began to carve back the image he had once lost. But the scars of betrayal, legal battles, and financial struggles remained etched in his story. At its core, Matt's story is more than a tale of vehicles and recoveries. It is a story about persistence when the odds scream otherwise. It is about getting up after betrayal, after failure, after being dragged through courtrooms and deserts alike. For some, he will always be the rescuer. For others, he is a cautionary tale about trust and fame. But for millions, his legacy remains simple: the man who, no matter how deep the sand, always found a way to pull forward. As Matt's business grew, so did his responsibilities. He was no longer just a rescuer. He was a leader, a mentor, and a boss. Every member of his team looked up to him, not only for guidance in the field, but also for stability outside of it. Managing people was harder than managing vehicles. Egos clashed, mistakes were made, and decisions carried consequences beyond his own shoulders. One wrong choice could cost not just money, but the trust of those who relied on him. The internet built Matt's success, but it also became a double-edged sword. Trolls spread rumors, rivals created false narratives, and controversies were amplified far beyond their real weight. A small mistake during a recovery could spark thousands of angry comments, with strangers turning into self-proclaimed experts, ready to tear apart his every move. The pressure to stay perfect on camera became almost unbearable. Even as millions watched his videos, the financial struggle never truly ended. Fuel costs skyrocketed, vehicle repairs drained accounts, and employees' salaries added constant pressure. The more the channel grew, the more it demanded. Viewers saw adventure. Matt saw expenses stacked higher than the cliffs he often scaled. He realized that growth did not always mean profit. It often meant a heavier chain around his neck. Years of sleepless nights, endless desert heat, and the stress of lawsuits and betrayals began to take a toll on Matt's health. His body carried the marks of recovery work, aching joints, bruises, scars that never healed. Stress carved deeper lines on his face, but he rarely spoke of it. On camera, he was strong and smiling. Off camera, he was a man quietly enduring the price of his lifestyle. One of the hardest battles Matt faced was the demand to keep his content exciting. Fans wanted bigger risks, bolder rescues, and cinematic drama. But real recoveries were not always entertaining. They were slow, messy, and dangerous. He wrestled with the question, should he stay true to the reality of recovery work, or give in to the pressure of making it a spectacle? This tug-of-war between authenticity and entertainment haunted him at every upload. With fame came competition. Other recovery channels emerged, eager to replicate his formula and steal his audience. Some did so with respect, others with malice, spreading rumors or mocking his mistakes. Matt never saw himself as a rival. He just wanted to do his job. But the YouTube world had turned recoveries into a battlefield for views. And he had no choice but to fight for relevance. Through every downfall, there was one force that kept Matt going, his community. Fans across the world sent messages of encouragement, letters of gratitude, and even donations to keep his business alive. Strangers became supporters, supporters became friends, and friends became family. Whenever the storm seemed too heavy, it was the voices of ordinary people that reminded him why he started in the first place. Matt's story is still being written. The betrayals, lawsuits, and hardships are chapters that shaped him, but not the end of his book. He dreams of expanding beyond recoveries, training others, building a legacy company, maybe even stepping back from the front lines one day. The future is uncertain, but one thing is clear. No matter how deep the sand or how high the hill, Matt has built a reputation for never backing down.